be like a conversation with yourself that you may never had in the past. I mean, obviously everybody talks about Morrissey in terms of the way you were as a kid, or the way you grew up, or the fact that you felt alone, you wanted to go with... Like, for instance, you used to go to Bowie and Roxy music concerts, and you didn't go in a crowd like most people do, you went by yourself.
That's right, yes.
Did you genuinely go to these things at the age of 12 and 13? That's pretty young to be going to things like that.
Yes, unbelievably. When I was 12, I went to see the New York Dolls in Manchester and Roxy Music, and the New York Dolls didn't turn up because the drummer died the day before, but I was there from 8 a.m, pressed against the door and then pressed against the stage, and then they made the announcement that the drummer had died, and all the audience began to weep. And so yeah, to be going to see people like that, and Lou Reed at the age of 12, and he wouldn't come on until midnight, and he was singing about heroin and transsexuality, and I thought it was fascinating, and much better than the world that everybody else knew in Manchester. I thought, this is really interesting, these people are interesting. It's I was ready for all that. I was ready for anything that was sort of pushing people to question gender politics or anything like that. Only because it was interesting.
And therefore, were you ready to become... Did you want to become a star, by the way?
I never believed I could be, because I was always terribly shy. And I always felt that when you would see people on stage and on television and so forth, that they must have had some incredible... what's the word? They must have been very outgoing and very brave and so forth, and I wasn't that person. But so when I found that I was beginning to do it, I realised it was easier than I thought.
And also, though, anything was an antidote to school, wasn't it? Because school was a bit of a hellhole, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was shocking, really shocking. I mean, I can't really... I didn't survive school, to be honest. It still gives me nightmares. I can't believe it was so bad and so forth. Very shocking. But, you know, a common story, I think.
I was just going to say, I mean, does it make you feel any way better at all to know that there's millions out there felt the exact same way?
No, because there's millions who view education and it was a breeze and it was useful and they got something from it, and those people I really envy. When they look back on their school days and college days, and especially in America when it was so fruitful and giving, education was so fruitful. I can't imagine that. When I think of education and school, I just think of violence and nothing else. And that's the teachers, not the pupils.
Or the system even.
Yeah, the system, really.
Yeah. And what about the sadism of Catholicism, or is sadism a bit of a big word?
It's not that big, no. It's quite sadistic, yes. But we can all survive that, really. We can all rationalise.
But like when you were a kid, like, you know, you go to bed, like the Moors murders happened and you had the song about that. Did that affect you in a strange way? Did it give you nightmares? Did it keep you awake?
Well, yes, because at that time the world was a very different place in the 60s, and it was incredibly shocking crimes. And they still are shocking crimes. I mean, if you read the details of those crimes, they're still very, very shocking now. And so being in Manchester, being close by, being small, and all the victims, most of the victims were quite small, it was a very profound thing. I mean, it still is. I mean, you see a picture of Myra Hindley or Ian Brady in the newspapers today, and it's almost like a Victorian, it's almost like a witch trial or something.
It's got
some
like
strange mythology about it. The larger-than-life figures, the crime is still unbelievable.
It looks like we're having a conversation about the word compassion somewhere. You once said, compassion? I only have compassion for myself. I mean, should I not throw back old quotes? Is that a mean one?
Some of them are useful, but yeah, I'd still say that today, I think.
I think one of the best ones is your description of Manchester. Docklands without the dock. Was it that bad, yeah?
Well, I believe there is a new Manchester now. I think there's lots of bright, sparkling shops everywhere, and people are rejuvenated. But, you know, I somehow can't imagine several industrial revolutions changing the people of Manchester. They won't change. Right. So there can't really be a new Manchester.
When around the age of 17 or whatever it was in 1979 you went out to a gig and you met Johnny Marr, was that a really pivotal, this was like
no, it didn't seem so at the time. I first met him at a Patti Smith concert, and then we didn't meet each other for 4 years, and but no, it didn't seem pivotal at the time. But when we began to form the Smiths, everything happened incredibly rapidly, so rapidly that I scarcely had time to think. And it was just a matter of, well, either you're ready to do this or you're not.
It looks to me as though you two, or you in particular, are one of the few who was able to cope pretty damn well, or it seemed to me as though you did, with literally overnight success.
Well, it felt very overnight. It really did. But I think I was prepared, because even as a child I could never stop singing. And I was truly obsessed with pop music. And I had thoughts of doing it throughout the period that we know as punk. And it never happened. So the door opened and there I was.
And it was a good 5 years.
Yes, it was.
You all had good fun.
It was very interesting way to pass 5 years. Fascinating. And it was like a constantly revolving door.
But a lot of laughter.
Oh, a few giggles, yes, a few giggles. Would I say laughter? Yes, little bits of laughter.
And when Johnny left then, like when he did leave by around 87, that must have been a bit of a shock.
Yes, it was. It was a shock. And I think it was a really bad idea as well. I don't know how he lives with it, really.
Well, he wanted to do something else outside the Smiths. You didn't.
Well, no, I didn't. I never imagined that I would be solo. And I think he wanted to work with other people. But I imagine that need was temporary.
Yeah.
And I think he probably really did regret dissolving it.
And if it was temporary in a very short space of time, do you think he didn't have the pride to say, listen, sorry, that was only a 6-month thing, so let's just get back to this?
Oh, yeah, he would never say that, no. No, he would never say that. So, I mean, he just sort of, I mean, it was a dreadful decision he made, and he supports it simply now by saying that the Smiths were a terrible experience, and Morrissey was evil, and he made us record the Cilla Black song, and, you know, that's how he justifies his terrible decision, but it is history now.
Do you know this thing that people have this phrase, a lot of British journalists have, of being Morrissey, where you can, like, that you can get a wry little sentence out that sort of dismisses any question that might have to go into too much detail or whatever. Well, is that a defensive mechanism, or does it exist at all? Well,
I think it defines a certain type of sort of supposedly willowy but feisty character, I think. So it simply defines a type, but I think. Maybe not.
Well, it's not for you to have to worry about.
It's not for me to worry about, because I am Morrissey.